There's this feeling in the air, right? A feeling that's become almost impossible to ignore in our politics. That sense that real statesmanship, that kind of visionary, bring everyone together leadership, has just disappeared.
Yeah, it's the big question so many of us are asking. We're looking for leaders who put the country first, who build bridges, and who think beyond the next election. And mostly, we're coming up short. But here's a thought. What if their scarcity isn't an accident?
What if this whole situation isn't some modern-day failure, but actually an intentional feature? Something baked into the very DNA of American democracy from the very start. It sounds completely backwards, I know, but it's an idea with some really deep roots. Okay, let's dive into this. To figure this out, we've got to go way back to the beginning. The framers of the Constitution, they were not starry-eyed idealists. They were practical, and maybe even a little cynical. They were deeply, deeply skeptical, not of the people, but of power itself. So they designed a system specifically to keep it in a cage. And look, this quote right here from James Madison, it's not just some random thought. It's basically the operating manual. The founders thought it was incredibly dangerous to build a government that needed a steady supply of brilliant, heroic leaders to function. Their starting point was, hey, most of the time, we're not going to have those people in charge. And this is the really crucial part. They built a machine with a lot of breaks. Things like checks and balances, separating power between the branches of government, federalism. It was all designed to make it incredibly difficult for any one person or any single group to just take over. The whole goal was stability through gridlock, you could say, which deliberately lowered the need for some bold, heroic leader who, let's be honest, could just as easily become a tyrant. Okay, so the founders built the engine. But modern life, well, it has strapped a massive rocket to it. The very things they designed to slow power down have been supercharged by technology, by the media, and by huge shifts in our political culture. Just think about the media. It wasn't that long ago that a few big TV networks created something like a shared reality for the whole country. But today, our media world is completely shattered. Any leader's message is instantly run through a partisan filter, it gets twisted, and it's immediately labeled as either the gospel truth or total propaganda, depending on what channel you're watching. I mean, how can anyone be a unifying figure when half the country is being told not to even listen to them? And this shift also applies to how we pick our leaders in the first place. It used to be that party bosses would often pick candidates who could appeal to the most people, someone kind of in the middle. Well, not anymore. Now it's all about the primary system. And to win a primary, candidates get pushed further and further to the extremes, making them absolutely radioactive to the other side when the general election rolls around. The system itself weeds out the compromisers. And on top of all that, you have the 24/7 microscope of modern media. See, real statesmanship requires a little breathing room to think, to negotiate, heck, even to change your mind. But today, every little slip-up is a viral clip. Every single time you try to compromise, your own side screams betrayal. It forces leaders to stop thinking about the long-term good of the country and instead just focus on winning the day's news cycle. So all this brings us to what might be the trickiest part of this whole puzzle. It raises a really tough question. Even if a genuine statesman showed up today, would we even be able to see them for what they are? History actually suggests maybe not. Let's just take Harry Truman. When he left the White House in 1953, his approval rating was in the basement, a measly 32%. People thought he was a failure. Fast forward to today, and historians consistently rank him as one of the great ones, a really decisive president. The very decisions that made him so unpopular back then are the exact ones we now see as visionary. And this isn't just a one-off thing from a long time ago. Think about Ronald Reagan. During his presidency, a whole lot of people saw him as a dangerous, incredibly divisive figure. Today, he's often the one people point to as a model of statesmanship. It really seems like we only give our leaders the title of statesman long after they're gone. Okay, so what's the real story here? Let's try and weave all these different threads together, because it's clearly not just one thing, right? It's more like a perfect storm of different factors all hitting at once. You've basically got three things happening. First, it starts with the original design of the system, born out of that deep distrust of power the founders had. Then, you layer on top of that all these intense modern pressures, that 24/7 media microscope and a primary system that rewards the loudest voices. And finally, you add in the cultural shifts of our time, this deep, deep polarization and a general feeling of cynicism. It's that potent combination that makes the environment so toxic for real statesmanship.
Which leaves us with one last, pretty challenging question to chew on. After looking at how the system was designed to work and how our modern world has put it on steroids, we really have to ask ourselves, is the problem a lack of good people who are willing to lead? Or is it that we, the public, have created a system where we refuse to be led by anyone who isn't already 100% on our team?